to talk about Elon Musk's fucking bedside table and what a joke our society. We're living in a society that was designed by Reaganites in the 80s. It's unfortunate that these stupid ass ultra capitalists have so much fucking power. We live in a society where Elon Musk can literally just buy Twitter. It's to me what he's doing with Twitter, it's almost like a practice dictatorship. He's firing all these fucking people. He's reinstating the thugs that he wants on there, Trump, whoever, and they're actually getting rid of Antifa accounts and things like that. So they are censoring free speech. It's just they think it's politically unbalanced. Elon Musk has this idea that the left has gone insane with woke politics. He thinks he's like a center left guy, and the left has just gone nuts and things sort of, which is not true. He is a right wing fascist idiot. The idea that anybody thinks that he's like the smartest person in the world. I mean, he is a cartoon figure. He is like sort of self-conscious. I don't even want to give him the fucking attention because he really is just a media figure. And I mean, that's part of what the stock market is, right? It is just this speculation, and it kind of defies actual logic and actual rules of, like, if the companies are failing, if the products aren't selling, the stock can still go up in value. I mean, Tesla is a good example of that, where, like, it's incredibly overvalued. The value is based on the projected earnings that they could theoretically make if their, electronic battery power or their fucking, like, spaceships or whatever the fuck. It's all just hype. It's all just rich people gambling. Now I have all these fucking... I mean, nobody watches my live streams. I guess maybe they watch them later. Look, this is... Part of doing a live stream is you do it without a net, okay? I guess you could call that sincerity. You could call it realism. I mean, I think it's just inherent in the nature of doing... The internet, right? The internet, you can kind of include more of reality. So there's a lot of cringe. And I don't know, part of doing the live streams is to sort of like think out loud. I don't know, rhetorically work your way through their soliloquies. These Shakespeare characters, they don't know what the hell they think either. They have to talk to find out what they think. I don't really have a subject. I've been finding it harder to think of things to talk about now that, like, these Gen Z people are sort of making fun of the idea that I'm a live streamer. Or they're not really making fun of it. I think this is like an aspect of Gen Z, is like they don't even know what the fuck is a bit and what's not a bit. And I think they like, like a few months ago, I was in Washington Square and there was this mob of kids around the arch. There was like 100 kids surrounding this guy. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what the fuck is this, Like, why are all these... There's some famous person in there. Who is it, Is it Harry Styles? Like, who the fuck is here? And so I'm, like, leaning in, trying to figure it out. And it's some guy I've never fucking heard of. It's some guy... It's like the joke was to these kids, they were like, oh, dude, it's fucking... I don't even remember who it was, but I looked him up right there on my phone. He only had like 2,000 Instagram followers. He was like some Instagram rapper, YouTube rapper guy. And so all these, like, Gen Z kids or they were like probably around 20 years old are like, oh my God, it was like a joke to them that this guy was like, they were treating him like a celebrity, right? Like he wasn't actually a celebrity. In fact, maybe he was kind of whack. I don't know. I didn't look at it too closely, but like that sort of feels like what these Gen Z kids are doing, where they're like talking about how I'm a live streamer. Or okay, so one of the most exciting things, my friend Ashley has done more for my career probably than anybody ever. No one has ever like promoted my work as fully, widely, but like I said, it feels like a bit in some I know she tells me it's not a bit. But so yesterday, to my pleasant surprise, I'm checking my social media after I wake up, and Ashley has made this fucking Instagram post tagging me in it. And she's regularly like, taking pictures of my book, sharing it on Instagram. Thank you. Her friends have started to do it. That's why it feels like a conspiracy and sort of a practical joke. So she posted this. There's this fucking radio show at Bard College. And one of her friends hosts it, I guess, or something like that. It's on college radio. And she posted this. Not only was this not something that was like in the works, it had already been done. The radio show was already done. It had been broadcast and was on the internet. And they read one of her poems called My Life in Bisquick, I think. Or is it Nesquik? Is it Bisquick? I think it's Bisquick. And then, following that, they read a short piece of mine called Palo Alto, directed by Gia Coppola. Which is sort of, there are references to this situation in the poem. Maybe I should do a close read on it to just explain what it means to everybody. I'm sure they know, but it has the line, my poetry's for Ivy League 22-year-olds or something. I don't have the book. Do I? Immediately at hand. Oh, here it is. Oh, what do you know? Here it is right here. My latest release. Okay, my poetry's for Ivy League 22-year-olds, all right? So, here you go. These kids go to Bard Ivy League, I'm not sure. But, Ashley has been turning my people on to my live streams, which are unhinged, okay? So this guy read my poem, which is a little unhinged. Palo Alto, directed by Gia Coppola, is a film. Okay, so it's 11/11, which they did not read on the radio. They should have, because that's a part of the poem. 11/11 is part of the title. And it's important to this poem because, 11/11, of course, we all know the implications of this day. It's a special day, as I say in one of my poems from a few years ago. 11/11 is a very special day. And then, first line, my poetry's for Ivy League 22-year-olds. So what's 11/11? It's 22. So you already have magic going. The 11/11 is important. But Palo Alto, directed by Gia Coppola, is a film. I saw it during the pandemic because it's literally on every fucking, free Roku. It's on Pluto TV. Roku has got all these streaming, free movies and shit you can get, basically. And there's a lot of interesting stuff, even without any money. If you have an internet connection, there's a lot of really, like Palo Alto, directed by Gia Coppola, which is sort of an art film. So I didn't watch a lot of it. I saw, I think I watched maybe about half of it during the pandemic. That's what I was doing during the pandemic. I was just sampling a lot of different kind of movies and I don't necessarily need to watch an entire film. I can watch 30 minutes of a movie and be like, oh, okay, I kind of get the gist of this. And if it's not holding my interest, I don't mind like sampling a lot of. I'd rather see like bits and pieces of like 10 or 12 movies, maybe, than like most movies. I don't know. You watch them and you sort of are waiting for the end to kind of like fulfill your experience of it, and a lot of times it never happens. You watch to the end and it's like, really, I watched this whole fucking movie for that? I should have turned it off halfway through. Books are like that a lot of the time too. I'll read the first 60 pages of a book, and if it doesn't grab me, it's like, okay, fuck that. I sort of get the flavor of it. I sort of see what it's about a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that's a hard and fast rule for everything, but like, there's so many goddamn. I did that with a lot of Marvel movies. I watched a little bit of fucking Thor. Because of all the goddamn streaming service, we had Disney Plus, for Christ's sake. So I watched like a little bit of like, what was it, Captain Marvel. They were all garbage. But now I have a little bit of a window into that MCU thing. Whereas there's so many of these goddamn movies, right? Like there's 30 fucking Marvel movies a year. Is anybody, I mean, I suppose there are a lot of people watching all of them, but I'd rather not think about that. Palo Alto, directed by Gia Coppola, and it is important that it's directed by Gia Coppola, because, okay, and whatever, fuck it, Ashley is from San Francisco, I think. My ex was from Santa Rosa, which is closer to Napa, which is where the Coppola winery and shit is. And so, like, that's where Sofia Coppola is from, really. And to be honest, it's the best part of the country. Like, the Bay Area, but, like, the North Peninsula and that whole, like, Napa, Sonoma, that whole coast with Bodega Bay and, like, Sebastopol. What are some of the other towns up there? They're all incredible. It's the most beautiful part of the United States as far as I'm concerned. Like Marin County up until, Mill, whatever the fuck that is, Mill Valley, up through Santa Rosa and north of there. It's unbelievable. There's hills, there's amber waves of grain, there's those poppies, there's, the fucking Pacific Ocean, Highway 1, like... Not to mention San Francisco's right there, which is a very cosmopolitan, hip place. And a huge part of the artistic, cultural legacy of this country. And so, like, there's a lot of transaction, as we know, between New York and San Francisco. And, like, in a lot of ways, for the coolest people in this country, the rest is just flyover. At least they kind of treat it that way. I don't know. But anyway... Palo Alto is on the south, it's like, that's Silicon Valley now. That's Stanford, Mountain View. I have been to Palo Alto, actually. The Facebook headquarters is in Palo Alto. But also, weirdly enough, Jerry Garcia, I think, is from Palo Alto, or like, that's where he met Bob Weir. They met in Palo Alto, and like, it kind of started there. So it's like, but for the purposes of this fucking poem, the fact that it's Palo Alto, directed by Gia Coppola, it's not the James Franco book, it's not the town of Palo Alto, although it's all of those things too. It's specifically the film. So it's like, my friend Ashley, she's Gen Z, and she grew up reading Rookie Magazine and shit. I don't know, she's also just very into films and Criterion Channel and all that kind of stuff, and like, I don't know, for poetry purposes, I find a lot of times, you can get the mood of a thing just by using sort of a pop culture reference or pop culture resource. Everything in my poetry is meant to be like hyperlinked and Googleable. So like, the titles, the lines, I want people to Google pink tax. I want people to Google, or think about Palo Alto fucking directed by Gia Coppola. It's a film directed by female. And, you know, Sofia Coppola, that was a huge artistic influence during the 2000s and the kind of indie sleaze era. I watched all of her fucking movies. I saw them in the theater. She was one of my favorite directors. Marie Antoinette, fucking, you know, I saw it in the goddamn theater when it came out. I mean, Lost in Translation, right, was a huge seminal classic, but I'm more into like Somewhere. I like that movie. Uh, I haven't seen the one with fucking Quincy Jones, Rashida Jones. I haven't seen that one that came out a few. You know, I don't. But there's also a class thing built into this, right? Like Sofia Coppola's a child of a famous person. Gia Coppola. This is a filmmaking dynasty, so they're children of privilege also, and you know, that's layered in. I am not Ivy League. I am not from the Bay Area. You know, I have managed, but I don't know, for the last 10 years or whatever, this has been my peer group. It's a different economic class, and I think that does speak to the aesthetics. You know, the Marie Antoinette film was sympathetic to to Marie Antoinette, I would say. It did not, it painted her more as like kind of just like, well, that was her world. You know, she was accustomed to this kind of like very chic opulence. And so when the revolution happened and she said, let them eat cake, that was a very natural, you know, she was used to eating cake. She'd always had fucking Louis Vuitton bags and shit. So it was a corollary to what was happening with class in our own country. Like I said, we're living in the Reagan stipulation era. The Great Society, the left economy in this country has been completely dismantled. So things like generational wealth, you know, there used to be estate tax was a lot more. Now it's like that wealth gets passed down. You see things like fucking Dan Bilzerian, whose dad was like an investment fucking shark in the 80s. All that money was laundered down to the kids, right? And that's something that doesn't escape me, right? Living in New York, you kind of have to be a child of wealth. I mean, I don't really talk about that with anybody. Money is just something, I don't know. Class is not really at the forefront necessarily in anybody's work. Other than me. That's why I'm talking about it. Because I'm poor. But I don't know if that doesn't really play into the film Palo Alto. I'm kind of getting off track. The thing about that film that I was kind of trying to like superimpose, or it's a rhyme. You know, I find this with life, right? Is like a lot of times things will happen to you in your life and you're like, that is exactly like this fucking movie, right? Like, it's kind of weird how movies are able to do that, you know, or I guess all art, but like, you know, for instance, sometimes you'll have like like I've found myself in situations with like a nuisance friend or somebody who wouldn't go away, and you're like, oh, that's exactly like the Cable Guy, you know, like there's just certain, and so with this situation, right, in the film Palo Alto, first of all, it's written by James Franco, which is, that's kind of the joke. That's part of the joke, is like James Franco was sort of the movie star. He's not dissimilar from me in a lot of ways. He's a millennial. We're about the same age. We kind of look similar. We're kind of actor, bro, dilettante. You know, he took it to the extreme. James Franco is like, if I had been born in Palo Alto and just had everything going for me and was, you know, 6 feet tall and this and that, he's me fully realized, right? James Franco is like, but he's also like this kind of creep, and like the book of his literary efforts are kind of interesting. You know, he's had a lot of poetry published and a lot of short stories published, and this movie may, and he's directed a lot of films. This movie may have been, I don't know, one of the more successful, like, uses of his original work, maybe. Because I think probably because of the direction. From what I understand, Gia Coppola actually really liked the stories and, like, wanted to make it, or I don't know. I think, I think he went to her to direct it, maybe. And then she read it and liked it and said yes. It's hard for me to believe this movie's directed in, or came out in 2013, because to me it seems like it feels like it could have come out in the last 5 years or something. In fact, it's almost 10 years old. It's kind of crazy. But it has all these children of rich, like Val Kilmer's kid is in it. So that's kind of layered in once again. But like the kind of thing that I remember from the film is, I mean, it's about a bunch of fucking skater kids and they smoke pot and this and that. But the thing that I was referring to kind of most explicitly was like the James Franco storyline. James Franco plays like this soccer coach or something. I didn't see the whole movie, but like I think it's Emma Roberts, also a famous person's kid, fucking Eric Roberts, the great Eric Roberts kid. She plays like a high school fucking soccer player. And once again, this movie was made in 2013. They probably would not have made it after Trump. But, you know, the storyline is James Franco is, I don't know, probably in his 20s or 30s or something. You know, he's an adult. She is a high schooler. And I think they sleep together, right? And I don't know. I didn't watch that far into the movie. I kind of turned it off. But the scenario where James Franco is kind of this creepy, like, soccer coach, I think is just funny. It's a funny parallel to, like, well, also, Ashley mentioned this movie at one point. I think she really likes this movie. She's from that milieu, sort of. And so I'm sure she can relate to it, or, like, you know, just stylistically, it's like, it's one of the things you'd put on, like, your vision board or whatever. Your Rookie magazine, like, curated, ultra curated, like, here's, like, you know, how I'm ultra curating just, like, the aesthetic of the mise-en-scène of, like, my life. Is, like, I watch Larry Clark films and Kids and Harmony Korine films. And I listen to fucking Sonic Youth and blah, 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 blah. And so the Coppolas feel like, Sofia Coppola and Gia Coppola feel kind of like of that. You know, Wes Anderson too. It's like everything's ultra curated. It's all about vintage. It's all about songs. It's all about expressing yourself through playlists and shit like this. Your clothes, fashion, traveling, being part of the jet set. But, you know, I've become sort of like the soccer coach, the middle-aged high school soccer coach to this rambunctious gang of, I don't even know, just Ashley's friends. It just feels like, I don't know, she kind of tries to push me on them. I don't know how much of it is just her, like, being like, oh my god, my friends are obsessed with you. I think that's more just her kind of saying that. Or maybe her own kind of, like, enthusiasm or something, like, she's, like, I don't know, projecting it onto them or something. Or, like, you know, I don't know. My work is not necessarily for everybody, but, like, I am trying to, like, confront class head on, and that's one reason why aesthetically I do, and technologically, you know, I'm live streaming on fucking YouTube, right? This is not even the same as, like, live streaming on Instagram. That's something like a cool person would do. But there are certain things about Instagram that, like, I don't know. Anyway, that's another subject entirely. So, they read this fucking poem. Should I read the whole fucking thing? They read this poem on the radio, and the guy was kind of laughing when he was reading it. He said something about she asked him to read it. He literally says that. If you listen to the broadcast, he goes, "They asked me to read it." And then he's like laughing as he's reading it. I don't know if it's because he thinks it's funny or if because it's like this insane stunt and joke. So let me read the rest of the poem. My job is to avoid work. You run the show, you are the show. Platonically sharing my futon overnight with future poets of female America, my timing couldn't be any more precise. 80% of the trees in New York City are male. The whale lost its mind fucking the glass in Indianapolis. Cum doesn't sink, it floats like a boat. Then it dissipates. He was fucking the aquarium so much, the pool filled with jizz, and he drowned. Okay, so this is really two separate, like, writing periods and two different times of day. The first half of this poem, everything up to my timing couldn't be any more precise, was written probably during the day, and it's more explicitly talking. The night before, well, I don't know if I want to disclose that, but platonically sharing my futon overnight with future poets of female America, my timing couldn't be any more precise. This is sort of a joke, once again, about the sort of Palo Alto-ness of this situation. But there's also kind of a sweetness, right? Like the relationship between Bill Murray's character and Scarlett Johansson's character in Lost in Translation. It's kind of sweet. You know, it's kind of... this lighting is so fucking bad. It's kind of sweet. It's like... it's platonic in a way. It's sort of romantic. It's sort of, you know, you're not even fucking sure. Even they don't know. But it's also just like this vibe, you know? And they have fun. And it's kind of innocent, right? It's not always like some creepy old man thing, you know? Like, I don't know. I think one of the unfortunate things in our lifetime is just the way people's age groups have just broken apart, and everybody's like in an oppositional generations, and like in a certain, especially with like kids, right? Like it's just looked on as like it's creepy if you like talk to kids or something. You know, it sounds creepy to even say that, right? It's like, don't talk to my fucking kid. Who the fuck are you? You trying to kidnap my kid? What the fuck are you doing? It's like, or, you know, like, I'm not saying that, like, older people should be dating younger people. Like, I think that there is something to be said for dating somebody age appropriate and, like, you know, especially if you're into, like, young, that's fucking, I don't know. It's... to me, it would make more sense that you'd want to date somebody who's like emotionally the same maturity as you, intellectually the same maturity as you, you know, experientially maybe. I don't know. But also, I think that generations do have a lot to teach each other, right? And there should be uninstitutionalized, real life, organic, you know, social interaction between the generations. And that is something that with all of the people I've met through the open mic, but also specifically through Ashley and her friends, it's kind of cool that, like, you know, I have friends that are like, you know, I can learn from them a little bit. Their energy's different, their perspective's different. They're smart kids. And they're a little more engaged and a little more passionate, a little more out there, maybe than, you know, my thing. I feel like with myself anyway, it's like late bloomer, or like, you know, 9/11 happened when I was 16 years old. which, you know, in another lifetime, we all would have been drafted into the fucking army. And so there was a traumatized decade that really happened after 9/11. And I do think that with millennials, it caused this kind of like delayed release, or like everything was overly safe, or, you know, also just hyper macho, hyper Americana, you know, the culturally, indie sleaze and all that, trucker hats. That was all like, it's interesting the way that the eras and the years and things change so swiftly, and fashions move in, and, you know, young people, they don't really realize that it's not going to be that way forever. They're the hottest thing around right now. I'm like Crash Davis, right? I'm a minor league baseball coach. You know, I don't know if I ever really made it to the bigs, but I'm sort of like this wizened, sort of nearing middle age. And so if I can impart some wisdom through my own sort of like failures, and but also I think it's a consequence of the way that I've, I don't know if I'd say chosen to develop, but like just the way that I've lived my life is like, you know, I didn't go into an MFA program when I was 22, and things like, you know, even just affording to live in New York, I've had to sort of find this kind of like fucking Oliver Twist, you know, like Artful Dodger kind of like, you know, I'm something of an anomaly economically. You know, there's not that many people, I don't think, other than people that like were born in New York and whose family have rent controlled apartments or something. There's not that many people that like have been able to live here as long with as little money and having to work as little as I have, right? So, but also, I haven't been able to buy in to get the education I need, or, you know, I'm shy in certain ways. So, like, even though I'm out here trying to do it myself, like, I'm not that able to, like, make the connections with, you know, like, fucking Thurston Moore or whatever, or some fame thing, or some big, you know, name thing. So it's like, I've kind of developed, I'm an autodidact in I would say in most ways, right? Like, I haven't really had any teachers that are older than me that were that hands-on really ever, you know. Certainly not since, like, you know, I was in my early 20s. And everybody else who wants to be a writer, especially, basically went into a fucking MFA program at some point, which minted them to become. And I don't want to harp on that, but, you know, it's like that fucking book, MFA versus New York City, right? By the N+1 kids, who are all privileged as fuck. They all went to Harvard and shit. I don't even know if that's a choice necessarily. I mean, I think that's one of the exciting things about doing the open mic at KGB, and also this party that we went to last night at Beckett's townhouse. Is like, it did feel like you're in a room with people that are like serious about literature, serious about writing, but they didn't, I don't know. I guess I didn't meet that many people. I didn't find out that much about people's background, but it didn't seem like they were all just, I mean, I guess they were all children of privilege and MFA kids probably, but like, I don't know. I meet enough, you know, 22, 24-year-olds that are like not necessarily in MFA programs, who are just writers. You know, that's what the open mic gives you. It's like, you can come, you can share your work, you can meet a group of other writers, you can create a workshop or something in a way that's not this kind of financialized, into institutionalized debt, indenture, you know, program. Which is, you know, if you are a rich kid, You know, you can go to Columbia University and it's not going to, have some kind of super financial consequence for you necessarily. You know, if I came out of college with $150,000 in debt for a poetry MFA, it'd probably be the best decision I ever made. But I'm also not running around New York going to the fucking hotels having $30 drinks, you know? I can't even afford a $5 drink. And so that's something that I more or less just have to camouflage and hide from people. It's amazing I've even gotten this far, you know? I wish more people were sympathetic to my economic plight because there's not many people doing it this way, you know? And this is a story that you really don't see even getting told. Everything has become so much about intersectional. Not that, and I'm not against that, but like class is important, right? And class is really the foundation of the other problems. And it seems like because New York has become, it's not a city where working class people can come, certainly not Manhattan, right? If you're working class, you're not moving to downtown Manhattan and getting a job in a bar and paying your rent by working 20 hours a week and like writing about class. Like everybody who lives in Manhattan is already rich. So class is not really their concern. They don't know what it's like, right? To fucking eat at fucking TJ's or fucking have to buy every single goddamn thing from the dollar store or not be able to eat or I haven't been on vacation. Leave me alone. Uh my whole style is sort of a fuck you to decorum because there's been no sense of continuity in my life, That I think that's typical for millennials, right? I graduated college into a recession. Every job I've ever had, I was an independent contractor. Your paycheck, your gig economy, right? There's no insurance. You have to pay a ridiculous amount of money for a small room with 4 roommates somewhere way the fuck out on a train somewhere. You're riding a train hour and a half to any kind of social function or to work or whatever. Like, I don't own a house. I haven't had a car in 10 fucking years. Like, you live hand to mouth. And so that's what my work is like. My work is just like scraps. I just patch scraps together. I've tried to build a monument and an empire out of my experience. Like my TV show, my scenes from a life, my vlog. That's my attempt to like build an Empire State Building out of thin air, really. And no money. It costs no money, right? Any movie costs at least a few $1,000s or something. My show is like water. It's just like the cost of living. So all of that was, that's like a joke. I'm making a joke out of like sort of like the to be honest, she's the one that I don't want to be too personal, but I'm thrilled to have met Ashley, and like her friendship has changed my life in so many amazing ways. And so, but also like it's not like I'm some creepy guy that's like, hey, let me, First of all, she's 22, right? So she's an adult. She went to Bennington. But also, it's like, it's just kind of, it's a bit. Or it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a funny thing. It's a bit that it's like this kind of creepy thing, right? Because it's actually not. We're just it's a friendly. I knew when I saw her read at the KGB thing, I was just like, this is a voice of a generation. I don't know. She is an unbelievably good writer, actually. And so hearing my poem after her poem is just like, Jesus Christ. It's interesting because she writes these very long sentences, or at least complete sentences, and it is like a Gertrude Stein thing, or like it's almost like who writes like this, where it's like every line is almost like coming from a completely different place, but it's like, it's so interesting and so funny, and that it's like, but it works because they're all different, it's like, that's kind of that's what gives it's like variety. And so reading my thing afterwards, it's like everything's super clipped. My work became about condensation and just about packing as much internal rhyme into as small a space as possible, and getting things down in sort of like these economized word phrases. Oh God. You're a liar. Live reactions here. I'm just gonna, my new approach is just gonna be full transparency. I'm just gonna say everything. This is my diary. This is the Frankly Fabulous Video Diary. Okay, so this line originally said, "My timing couldn't be any worse," right? Which oftentimes I'm doing this. I mean, my timing couldn't be any worse is like a cliche. A lot of my work is just like capturing these kind of like turns of phrase, or like, just like household kind of phrases, like my timing couldn't be any worse is like a cliche. It's a cultural cliche in our for whatever reason. It's in movies. But it's also just like, it's the perfect phrase to express a certain kind of feeling, like there's a reason why that's like a meme, right? Like, my timing couldn't be any worse. It's just like, this is something that happens in our lives. And to be honest, that's like a lot of my work. These are really meant to be like platitudes, or like grand statements, or like almost like aphorisms about a bigger thing. It's crammed into this situation, so it sounds like I'm talking about my relationship with Ashley, which is not really what it's referring to. Although, in this context, it sounds like a joke about that, which is something actually that I don't like about the piece, because it's meant to be more just about, in general, my timing in my life has just been not good. Like, I've been in the right place at the right time a few times, and I haven't capitalized on it. I always like wait until after the fact to be like, okay, now I feel comfortable to do this. And by that point, it's too late. That's what I mean by my timing couldn't be any worse. But I thought, I can't really say my timing can't be any worse because it's just a cliche. So I have to change it. But also, like, the way it looked when I wrote it, it looked like it said this. It looked like it said my timing couldn't be any more precise. Just my handwriting, it looked like it said that. So I thought, in order to make it like a line of poetry, I can't just put in this sort of platitude or this like stock phrase, my timing can't be any worse. Which in reality, that's probably what I should have done. I thought, I need to change this. But it's also a joke about, like the whole poem is, it's sort of a joke about dating people in their 20s. Not that I do that. I don't seek that out, right? Okay, so I was having a conversation with one of these kids last night. These kids are mean, actually. I don't think they do like what I'm doing. I think they think I think they may respect it or something, but I don't know. So this kid's like, what did he say? He's like, why do you like Gen Z so much? He's like, why do you go out? And it's like, that was a surprise to me because that's not my feeling of it at all. I'm not like trying to get some Gen Z audience at all. I've been doing this for a few years now, and whoever the fuck wants to watch what I'm doing can watch what I'm doing. Ashley is the one that has made it seem like all of these people who are in Gen Z give a shit about what I'm doing, which I don't know if that's actually true or not. It might just be a bit amongst her friend group. But in any case, it's not something that I have sought out. I'm not some creepy fucking guy who's like, man, I want to date 24-year-olds. But a lot of the people I vibed with since I've been back in New York especially are like Gen Z. I haven't sought that out. I don't. So he asked me, he's like, why do you think that is? Why do you think? And, to be honest, the reasons I gave were they sounded pretty stupid when I was saying them. What I said basically was, I live in Manhattan. It feels like if there are 37-year-olds in Manhattan, they're probably not doing what I'm doing. They're probably like have a family or something. Any 37-year-old, or like, I don't know, they probably have a job and money, and like there's not that many millennials that it seems like to me, I don't know. When I go to Washington Square Park, right? Especially 2021, when I first got back to New York, it felt like bam, like Gen Z is in Washington Square Park. And that's because most of the young people that live in Manhattan are in fucking college because their parents are paying for them, right? Like Ashley and not all of her friends, but a lot of her friends are in college. And they're Gen Z. Like the kids who hang out in Washington Square Park are fucking Gen Z because, I don't know, either they're TikTok famous or influencers or something, or like they're rich kids. And if they're rich, they're probably in college, right? Everybody I know who moved to New York for college, they went to NYU or whatever new school. By the time they graduated college, they realized that like Manhattan sucks. All of the cool culture and shit was in Brooklyn. Definitely during the 2010s, but that's probably even still true. So to my perspective, anybody who's like a millennial who's like still in the culture industry that I know, they all live in Brooklyn, right? They live in Ridgewood or fucking Bay Ridge or something. Like anybody who's a millennial who's like creative can't really afford to live in fucking, or like, I don't know, just like culturally, they all moved to Brooklyn. Like that's what you did after college. Whereas like, Manhattan, there's still all these Gen Z kids because like they got to New York to go to Columbia or NYU or New School or wherever the fuck. Like when you get here, then a few years you realize like, oh, everything cool's in Brooklyn. Let's move there. And so by the time you graduate college, you move to Brooklyn. That was one reason. But like I said, I live in Manhattan. So when I do the KGB series, there are definitely a lot of people that come from Brooklyn to do it, but also like it's in Manhattan. So you get people from New Jersey, you get people from Queens, you get people from uptown, right? Like Ashley and her friends, they don't go to Brooklyn that often. Maybe a few times a week, but like they'll go to something in Manhattan every fucking day. They'll go to an event at KGB or Poetry Project or the Algonquin or whatever the fuck it is, because they live there. Uptown, it's not that easy to get to Brooklyn. Like, at a certain point, you realize, oh, wait a minute, Uptown sucks. Let's move to fucking Crown Heights or whatever. Like, I don't think those kids are far enough along in like their New York experience that like they've gotten to that point. But also, Manhattan has sort of had this creative resurgence. There has been a new downtown, I feel like, specifically since the pandemic, but even before that. The whole Dime Square thing, I think part of what that was, it was a little bit of a working class thing in Manhattan, actually. The dirtbag left, the Bernie people, to be honest, they did sort of talk about class in their own way. Uh, but I don't know if that's why Gen Z people, it could be just because I met Ashley and she has so much energy that she just promoted my shit to all these people that, like, that kind of enthusiasm might just rub off. But also, like, you know, I have developed an interesting form for myself through my pamphlets, through my style of poetry, through my vlogs, through my live streams, through my music, whatever. Like, it's not something that was, I'm not like some half cooked MFA graduate who like has half of a style. It's like I figured this shit all out for myself. I do it myself, you know,